Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 16 going on 17 novels of suspense. My current book is All This Could Be Yours, which you see cleverly on the door behind me. My next book comes out in September, and it is called Mother, Daughter, Sister, Stranger. And you will be hearing much more about that when the time comes. But this afternoon, I am so honored and delighted to get to introduce you to Tracy Sierra, whose new book, her second book, is called Warning Signs. Let me tell you all that this is absolutely terrific. It is just out now from Pamela Dorman Books, and you know that means it's going to be a great book. But as Tracy listens, she's out west with her kids. But let me tell you quickly about my Saturday. So last Saturday, I thought, oh, I have errands, I have many things to do, I have book things to do, but I'm going to talk to Tracy, I remembered, on Tuesday. So I thought I better read this book, at least start reading this book. So I went into our sunroom and pulled up on my favorite chair and opened the book, and I thought, I'll just read for like half an hour. And you all, I did not get up. I did not move from the chair. It got dark outside, and I was still reading. It was that good. I did not budge. When they say I could not put this down, I literally, honestly, could not put this down. And the highest of accolades for Warning Signs by Tracy Sierra. Congratulations, Tracy, on this. You just hit it out of the ballpark again.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, your first book, Night Watching, was such a blockbuster. And every good thing that could possibly happen to a book, including being on Jimmy Fallon, happened to that book. So then someone says, yeah, so we want another one of those. Are you excited or terrified? How did that work?
Well, I feel really lucky in that I started Warning Signs before Night Watching even came out. About 6 months before. And for that reason, I think I didn't feel the second book pressure that a lot of authors do, which I think I now understand better having had Night Watching come out, because you see what people love about a book or what they dislike about a book, and those ideas can kind of get in your head and influence the work itself in a way. And I kind of didn't have that. So while I think that obviously the voice as the writer and so many of the themes and the messages and the overall sort of focus on suspense and scariness, I think that'll be in kind of all of my books. But the plot is very different. The characters are a real departure. Whereas I think if I had had Night Watching come out and then kind of seen reactions to it, I would have felt a lot more pressure to do the same thing, just slightly different, I guess. So I feel really grateful that I was able to kind of have the freedom. And hopefully now readers will see the second book and say, okay, well, we get the overall feeling, but we don't, expect the unexpected too. So.
Yes, I mean, it does give you some freedom. And we'll talk a little bit later about what I see as the sort of Tracy Sierra DNA, because there is that, even though the books are significantly different, there is a similarity that's really wonderful to see. Let me just go back a little bit, though, before we get to the regular interview and ask you about being on Jimmy Fallon. I just can't resist. You were so cool and so poised. Talk a little bit about what that was like and how that happened.
Yeah, they do a book club kind of whenever he feels like it. And the round I was in, because they do it differently every time, was a March Madness theme. So it went on for weeks where viewers were voting online, and I never knew ahead of time if it was going to make it up to the next round. So that show starts at 11 p.m. All right, that's late for me. So I was up watching the show to see if they would announce it every time. And so when it finally won was the only time they told me in advance. They taped the show a couple hours before it airs. So I think they didn't want it to be spoiled, by someone in the audience posting about it or something. So that was the only time I knew ahead of time. And the prize, I guess you could say, for it is you get to go on the show. And it felt so unreal that I didn't really get nervous, because it's a ridiculous thing, right? I'm not a performer. That's who goes on these shows. And so I was shockingly not nervous until I got there. And then I was very nervous behind the scenes, seeing, the real celebrities and all of that. But they were very nice. The one thing that kind of calmed me down is that night it was Jimmy Carr, who's a British comedian, Brooke Shields, and John Krasinski. And just seeing just how matter of fact they were, that it was just another day at work for them, was very calming. But the interview itself, I have pretty much zero memory of. I walked out there, it's a curtain onto a stage, and I thought, wow, the last time I walked through a curtain onto a stage was middle school. And then I have pretty much no other memory of that interview. That was it.
You were so cool and so funny and so engaged. And he really looked like he liked the book. He looked like he loved the book.
Yeah, he seems, it's funny because the reaction that people have when it's a Fallon book club is, Jimmy Fallon has a book club, which is sort of funny, but he does genuinely love books. And he is a multi-time New York Times bestseller himself because he has a very successful series of kids' books. And frankly, I'm really grateful because, as we all know, coverage of books by legacy media is kind of falling away. And so to have these late night hosts, Colbert has a club now too, to have them like actually promote books, just, warms my heart. And I think the way they did it the round I wish they would do that more because it gives so much exposure to so many great books. I ended up reading ultimately every single one of the 16 books that were, obviously the 15 other books. And they were just, it was just such a nice promotion that I don't know. I'm just very grateful for it. So, and he's just like he is on TV behind the scenes. He comes, introduces himself to everyone and just could not be kinder, more welcoming.
Incredibly talented.
Yeah. And so funny and just, and clearly a natural at what he does.
I just want to remind you that you just said that being on the Jimmy Fallon show was such a nice promotion.
But for all the books, because it was 16 covers that they were showing multiple times a week. And how often do you see multiple books on a TV screen? It just, I love it. I love it. And he, every round will have, sometimes it's just a book he really loves that he'll just say, I'm going to make it this one. But normally it's like 3 books, 4 books, and then he chooses one or the audience does. And so it kind of like lifts even more than the winner. I got to know a number of the authors who I was head to head with. Sierra Greer, who wrote Annie Bot, who I was up against in the first round, ended up blurbing Warning Signs. So it's sort of this like odd little community, Kristen Perrin, who had How to Solve Your Own Murder, who I was up against in the final round. I've gotten to know her, and she ultimately got a Barnes & Noble book club. So, it's just been this sort of funny little community that it's created. It's really lovely.
This is so out of order, but I do want to say that I was so uplifted. I'm such a fan of yours. I was so happy to see the wild success of this book. But you do realize that this is not what happens to most people.
It's so insane. I don't know how else to describe it. It's, because I now have met so many authors and it's vanishingly rare, right? There's a handful, and I know it's rare because studying up for being on the show, I think I watched every single author interview that has ever been on late night. And it only took like 30 minutes because this happens to so few people. So it's just, I just felt so lucky. And especially because a book like mine, it's kind of scary. I don't know that it's, something like Night Watching, which is a home invasion thriller. I don't think it's a natural fit for like, good morning, America, time to read this scary book, So for those other sort of big things, like I never in my wildest dreams, I knew from the get-go that it wasn't going to be a fit for a lot of those kind of things. I never even really dreamed of it. So to have it happen too, and it also happened months after the book's release. So I had an idea of where things were going to go. And then so many more readers got exposed to it. Yeah, guys, once in a lifetime type stuff. It was pretty incredible.
The world can be a marvelous place, especially for someone as talented as you are. And so congratulations. And we'll talk about Tracy's newest book, Warning Signs, in about 30 seconds. But first, I want to welcome you all to Crime Time here on A Mighty Blaze. Sue Street is here. So nice to see you. Sherry Steuben is here. Emily is here. And Renee, Andrew Ball, Robin Stull. So nice to see you all. Kathy Lanigan, Susie Baldwin says hi, ladies, and hello to you too. So many people here today to hear from Tracy Sierra with her brand new book, Warning Signs. I see some of you are new, and that is lovely as well. If you are new to Crime Time, welcome. And this is a great day to come. Crime Time was part of Mighty Blaze, which was started at the beginning of the pandemic, 6 years ago now, which seems so odd, to keep us all together and keep us reading, the brainchild of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt. We are all volunteers and still going strong. So welcome today. We're also going to be spinning the wheel of fun to give away a copy of Warning Signs by Tracy Sierra. So you must leave a question or a comment or just general applause and delight for Tracy in the comments. And at the end, we'll spin the wheel of fun and one of you will win. Quickly, I'm going to read you Tracy Sierra's biography, because if in some wild occurrence you do not know who she is, let me tell you, and then we'll tell you about her book. Tracy Sierra was born and raised in the Colorado mountains. She is an attorney who currently lives in New England in a colonial era home. When not writing, she spends time with her husband and 2 children. Night Watching, her debut novel, was selected as a Fallon Book Club pick. You know that. And Warning Signs is her second novel. Again, not a morning show book, not a but wow, this is a late night book. It is a dark of night book, and it is a blizzard book. Can you talk a little bit about this story?
Sure. Warning Signs has a 12-year-old boy as its main character, and he is on a father-son retreat into the backcountry wilderness of Colorado. And he has to figure out how to survive not just treacherous conditions, not just a mysterious creature he's convinced is lurking in the woods, but also the dangerous adults around him.
Putting it mildly. Where did the idea for this book come from?
Oh, I think, like so many things, it's so many ideas. So many sources of inspiration. I think, I grew up in the Colorado mountains, and I did backcountry trips much like this when I was that age. There's a system of off-grid cabins in Colorado called huts. They're very desirable to get to because the locations are absolutely stunning. You're able to access backcountry skiing, which has only gotten more popular since I was a kid. You have to hike and earn it, but it's really special. And I also thought, as a location for a thriller, it's just so perfect because the thriller author's biggest enemy is the cell phone, kind of. Otherwise, your characters can't solve their own problems, right? And so it's just one of these places that is isolated and kind of almost of a different time. And then on top of it, with Night Watching, which is about a mom home alone with 2 kids who realizes someone is in her home, it was interesting because the main character was a mother, and I wondered if it would kind of appeal to men. And so many men said that they didn't necessarily feel like that sense of vulnerability that I got from women who read it, but they had this terror, like, this is my worst fear, not being there to protect my family, right? Because the husband in Night Watching isn't home. And so I was thinking about that fear because I think parents are really afraid of not being there. So the boy's mother in Warning Signs is not there, right? He is now going into this without her. And as a mother, it's terrifying to me. I think it's terrifying for any parent. And then the sense of vulnerability, I think, is on a different scale here. Night Watching was very claustrophobic, but this, it's like, we were all children once, we all felt small and, physically vulnerable. But not only that, you have the entire wilderness out there. You have this entire other sort of level of threat that's there. So it's, instead of this more claustrophobic feeling, it's this wider sort of open threat, if that makes sense.
Equally scary. I mean, to set the scene a little bit, the 12-year-old boy is taken by his finance bro entrepreneurial father on a ski trip to this backcountry hut where he brings several other businessmen, financiers, investors. And it's all sort of a hypey sales trip where he's sort of showing off the father-son trip and how they can be all companions and be in nature and be all manly. And they're it's very distant from any place else. It's very cut off. And I do think it's interesting how much you focus and gorgeously that the tension and the tension, the excruciating tension comes partly from the external danger and partly from how much the boy wants his father to love him and will do anything to get his father to love him. Why is that balance between the forces of nature, which we'll talk about in a minute, and the forces of the heart? Why is that so important in your books? And how do you do that so powerfully?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all kids desperately want to please their parents, especially when they're very young, even if their parents are not necessarily the best parents, the best people. And, the boy's father, Zach's father in the book, Bram, he is a character, I think, I'm very familiar with this personality type. I think a lot of us are. He is the domineering person. At one point, Zach remembers his mother saying, that like his father's like the sun and everyone else is forced to rotate around him. And that means you are constantly on edge around a person like this because of the whims of their mood dictate your day to day. I mean, anyone who's had a difficult boss who, there's whispers when they walk in the office, even knows what that sort of feeling is like. And I think that, in something like Night Watching, where I played a lot with this classic idea of the stranger, right? The stranger danger, if you will, right? That I think we're all so afraid of. This is much more close to home and, statistically accurate about what actually is most threatening, because generally, we all know as thriller fans, you watch Dateline and you pretty much know who did it. It's someone that the victim knows, right? And so it's a much tighter circle here of, the father, the son, and all of these people who he is trying to kind of schmooze he's using this as a networking opportunity and expects his son to perform and network too, to get him, more money. And he's very focused on the finances of it all. And so I think that it's a very different dynamic, but to have it playing out in these remote places feels so natural. If you've ever been around these Master of the Universes type, one of the most difficult things to buy is an authentic experience, right? And it's why you have something like the Titan submersible accident happening where, all the money in the world and you're going down to see, taking your child, down to see the Titanic or whatever. You see these extreme sports and these extreme things because I think so many of these folks are really after something that is very difficult to buy, which is that authentic, unique experience. And it's certainly provided by the backcountry for a certain type of group because it's so majestic, it's so powerful, it's so isolated and special.
And you take all those things, the majestic and the powerful and the isolated and the special, and make that be performative. That the father is showing off, Bram is showing off, he's manipulating people into this experience, he's using this experience as a sales pitch, and also using his son, which is so cynical and so venal, and there's never been a worse villain. I have to say, and we know this, we don't like him from moment one.
Oh yeah. You're not supposed to. you may not like him, but you recognize him. That's how I certainly felt writing him is, because I have this young protagonist, there are things he's very capable in the backcountry because his mother worked for what's called Mountain Rescue, which is exactly what it sounds like, rescuing people in the mountains who have gotten themselves into trouble. It's very real organizations, all towns that are, wilderness, resorty, anything like that, have these organizations to help people out. And so he's very well trained by his mother. So he will know more than the average reader about the backcountry, about skiing, about all of this kind of thing. But he also is still a child. So you, as the reader, will be recognizing things that he is not equipped to, and recognizing right away the personality type. And you are not, the son, you are not the one who is supposed to be, charming these people. And so you, as the adult reader, are saying like, oh, look out for this kid, even as he's hopefully teaching you things about, why people go into the backcountry at all.
And I think that is one of the skills that you have, is that you have this multi-layered book of that we know what Zach is thinking, 12-year-old Zach is thinking, but then we're seeing what he's describing through our grown-up eyes. As much as we dislike his father, though, we instantly love Zach. He's 12. He's very, very smart. As you say, his mom has trained him in the backcountry and in skiing, and he knows what to do out here in the backcountry, but no one will listen to him. He's almost there are scenes when the grown-ups are making decisions that he knows are wrong and even dangerous, and he's so intimidated by his father that he's afraid to say anything about it. And we feel this push-pull of this poor little boy. I mean, it's a genius of you. It is so scary. How do you get into the head of a 12-year-old?
Well, I mean, I think, like I said, we were all kids once. And you remember, I think it's sort of a formative event, the first time you realize an adult in your life has no idea what they're doing, and they're actually high stakes. And you think, oh my gosh, they're absolutely clueless. You know what I mean? And I think that it's a feeling we can kind of all remember and identify with, where it's kind of drilled into you as a kid. You listen to grownups, you follow directions, you be respectful. And it's hard enough as an adult to speak up around a difficult person who has some kind of authority, let alone as a child. And certainly even as a kid, you'll second guess that even more because they're an adult. They have to know better, right? That's the definition. And I think it's really interesting too. I love reading about group dynamics of risk and all of this stuff. So just the different kind of personalities that come into play. I think I had a great time kind of creating those characters and the interplay between them for good decisions they make, bad decisions they make, all that kind of thing.
The group of men who go to this lodge is incredibly interesting, and we learn to tell them apart. Absolutely interesting. We see what they want and how far they'll go to get it, and what they need, and who's telling the truth and who isn't telling the truth. And poor Zach and another kid who comes feel like outsiders, and then they connect, and that's really a lovely moment as well. We're talking about warning signs, of which we see many by Tracy Sierra. Another of the many things that I think you did so gorgeously is that this book is every character on the page essentially who's alive is a man, but the women in the book are so powerful off screen. Can you talk a little bit about how you did that? And I mean, it is so cool, Tracy, how at the end of the book you realize, oh my golly, it's the women. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I really only have women in flashback. And when Zach is thinking back, because he, is used to going on these trips with his mother and his little sister and all of this sort of stuff. And so when I was initially planning this story and deciding on everything, I was kind of thinking about different things I really love, like different stories I really love and why. And a couple of them that I thought of, like this has this monster in the woods element. And I kept thinking about like John Carpenter's The Thing, which I love that movie. And it is, an all male cast, but it's weirdly feminist, because these men get themselves in so much trouble, like trying to outdo and out macho each other this whole movie. And you look at something else like Mad Men, right? I adored Mad Men, but it was really at the end of the day about the women a lot of the time. And I have a son and I have a daughter, and I find now, unfortunately, the book is far more relevant than it was when I started writing it, which was, 2 years ago now when I started writing it, and even three. Yeah, three. So I was very interested because as the mother of a son, seeing the messages about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, expectations for young people now. I think it's very difficult to be young right now. I think they're getting a lot of very difficult messages about what they're allowed to be by people who are frankly just exploiting them, right, for their own profit, to sell supplements or to do whatever it is that they're trying to do. And so I think so often, boys are told they have to define themselves in opposition to femininity of any kind, right? And they can't come up with a positive definition. It is often just anything feminine equals bad, and the opposite is masculine, without actually giving really fulsome sort of identity answers. And Zach is a 12-year-old, and his dad very much has ideas of what it means to be a man, as do other men on the trip, but his mom does too, right? And his mom is trying to raise him, and she is the primary parent. And so you get this sense that he's trying to find his way in the world, especially as a kid who doesn't fit that stereotype. Like, he's incredible at sports and skiing, but it isn't like, it's never enough really for his dad. And he is very sensitive and quiet, and he, this sort of thing that isn't necessarily what his dad sees as how he should be. So you have this kind of dichotomy. And with the teenager on the trip, Russ, is he's having kind of his own journey as someone who, it has his own issues that are different than how his dad defines what he should be, And so they're both struggling with that. And also, you do have the women in the background who are trying to get their own voice in there too, So
I just thought it was so clever the way you did that. And you take us to the back country. Let's talk about that a little bit. We're talking about Warning Signs by Tracy Sierra. Truly one of the best books of the year. You will not be able to put this down. My whole Saturday just went away. I just sat in the chair and read this. What is the backcountry? What does that mean? And how do you know so much about that?
Yes. So the backcountry is really anything that is out of bounds, right? No one is coming to save you, right? Like, you are out there on your own. You are expected to self-rescue. If you have to reach out to mountain rescue, it's a huge deal. I know about it just because, I did it growing up. Most people who, are growing up in the mountains, like, we did trips even with school, doing these things, and you cross country ski up to these backcountry huts. And I have wonderful memories of it because kids really like to be independent, right? And so we would just be totally kind of, if you'd feel really in charge of yourself. And the equipment has gotten a lot better since back then. So it's a lot easier to backcountry ski now because you can ski on almost like downhill skis to get up there, and just, they have special bindings and stuff. But as I'm a lifelong skier and grew up in a resort town and did these trips, and I am like nowhere near as skilled as a lot of people are at it, certainly. But I do have really fond memories of it. And I think it's part of the reason that I had a child protagonist, because that's how I remember it. I remember experiencing it the best, because those are just sort of foundational memories for me.
It comes through so beautifully, the love of skiing and how beautiful it is, and how.
Yeah, I think so often with these sort of things, it's like, you put your characters in these extreme situations, and readers are like, who in the world would do this crazy thing, And I was at an event a couple of days ago, and the lady in front goes, "That's right," because it is kind of crazy. So I wanted to get across kind of why people do it. And Zach himself just has such a love for the wilderness and feels generally until this specific trip where he's with his dad and there's this whole new set of expectations for what it is. He just really loves the backcountry. He loves skiing. Like there's a scene where I write about what it feels like when everything comes together. And I am not a sports person, period, but I do really love skiing, and what it feels like when you kind of have that have that feeling of like weightlessness in nature and just how beautiful it can be, because it does help explain why these experiences are something that people seek out so actively.
And that was such a beautiful scene. I remember that so well because it was so tense going into it, and then not only the joy but the sense of relief that of what happened up to for a while. It's kind of there's also wonderful science and wonderful information about avalanches.
Mm-hmm.
And you weave it in. I felt so smart after reading it, and I felt that I understood something that I never really thought of in that way before. How do you know so much about avalanches, and how do you think about them?
Yeah, so I actually put this in the acknowledgments, but when I was about Zach's age, a little younger, I think, I was on the top of a ski mountain. And I could never put it in a book because it was so coincidental, no one would believe it. But I was with my little like 5th grade class, and we were getting an avalanche education course up there from a ski patrol guy. And across the valley is this big bowl. And as he's teaching us about avalanche, that bowl slid. And, as the crow flies, it's maybe a mile. And it's just, you could see it perfectly, the whole thing come down. And I would be happy to never see an avalanche again, but I was very grateful I saw it, especially at that safe of a remove, because you can take these courses, and if you are going into the backcountry, you should take these courses. It is a necessity. These things are largely preventable. But to see the power of it, to like the sound, the way that the snow came up and blocked like the entire view of the valley because it was so powerful. I mean, it was really something else. And I have, for that reason, and just I think you have to have, I don't even want to call it fear, but it's like if you love the wilderness, you have to respect it, and you have to respect the power of it. I think it's very easy for human beings to think nothing bad will happen to me, or, to feel like masters of nature in so many ways. And boy, I definitely learned that day that I was not. And so certainly it's something I researched a lot to get right in the book. And I really enjoyed doing it and reading about it, because it's just so fascinating. It's such a little example of just how beautiful, terrifying, powerful nature is, and how uncontrollable it can be.
And especially humbling in when you see it like that. And also perfect, talking about writing, perfect for a thriller writer, when there's a character who thinks he can control everything, and nature is saying, ha ha, you have no idea. And
Exactly.
that sort of covers the whole book. I also loved, and I've skied some, but not a lot. One of my favorite photographs that I have is me standing, in my little outfit with skis in Snowbird or someplace, by the sign that says easiest way. And I'm going the other way. And I splatted soon after, because I thought, I don't need to go the easiest way. And it just shows you that there are forces of nature that you can't control. And if you don't know what you're doing, you are doomed. And that's what comes into this book as well.
Yeah, I think that, I love an unlikely hero. Night Watching was a mom home alone with 2 kids, right? Not Bruce Willis taking on an intruder, right? And this isn't like Liam Neeson armed and taken, or some super trained person. It's a young boy dealing with this stuff. And it's just, I think I will always have that like unlikely hero, because it emphasizes strengths that we don't emphasize enough, in my opinion, right? In Night Watching, for example, the mother's closeness with her children, her ability to know how to keep them calm and quiet, her knowledge of her own home, of sort of like three-dimensional space and plan ahead, and like this mathematical thinking that she had, and is very protective, right? And here you have this young boy who has done, like, in many ways, a lot of mundane work learning about this stuff. The first chapter of the book, is a year before the events of the story, and he's going up to the same hut with his mother and his sister, and they come to this open area that is clearly an avalanche path from not that long ago, which you can always tell because snap trees, and it's very obvious. And his mom makes them dig an avalanche pit to check the layers of the snow and the quality of the snow and make sure it's safe to cross there. And doing that is physical. It is boring. It takes time. You have to be patient, all of this stuff. But like, that is often what keeps you safe. That is often the thing that protects, right? And we so often emphasize protection as this, like, I'm armed and ready to protect, when often it is like a lot less glamorous, but a lot more important.
It's just preparation and knowledge and patience.
Correct.
And in a novel, though, in a thriller like Warning Signs, we as readers know this is foreshadowing like crazy. You're giving us information for later. So it's not only interesting at the time, and it's superly interesting at the time, but it also adds to the suspense of this incredibly well-paced novel. This is there's a music to this book. There's a rhythm to this book. There's an ebb and flow of suspense of this book. It is relentlessly forward moving. Is that top of mind for you, just to keep us turning the pages as fast as we can?
Yeah. So I wrote a book before Night Watching that was rejected a not cute number of times. That you hear these stories about these super successful authors where it's like, Stephen King got rejected 10 times, so keep at it. Like, give me a break. I mean, it is in a drawer. But the reason that it got rejected from, the agents who bothered to tell me why, was that it started too slow. That's what that was the consensus. And so, fueled by spite and irritation, I started writing Night Watching. And the first line of the book is, there's someone in the house. And so it sort of almost starts in a third act, right? And I learned while writing Night Watching specifically that I love writing action. However, action without caring about the characters is useless, right? You don't really care about some random people this stuff is happening to. So you have to kind of have the action mixed with getting to know the people. And I love a plot. I do. Even my favorite classic novels are really plot driven. I love to have things that are happening and moving forward. And I think, in many ways, Warning Signs, because it's a bigger cast of characters, there's definitely a lot of things that happen at the beginning where you think, well, that's a mystery, and that's another mystery, and this is very strange, and I don't know how about this or that. But it's a little bit slower at the start to Night Watching, and then kind of takes off very fast right through the end. So, but if you don't, for me, it is top of mind, because I start really with like the characters, and then I come up with the plot kind of as it goes from there. So I'm very much about plot. I love a plot.
Yeah, I love a good plot too. And did you know the plot first, or did you just see what happened?
Yeah, I do a lot of scribbling in notebooks. It's, I guess, my process. And I start with characters. So I have to kind of have an idea of who the characters are, how they relate to each other. And then as I'm getting those ideas, I'm kind of outlining what I want to happen. And here I had a setting I really wanted to use. So that was helpful. And then I end up kind of brainstorming ideas, ultimately just have like a 1-page scribbled kind of outline. I like to know before I start that I have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I have to know the characters before I start writing them. And so then, once I get going, and I find it pretty miserable until about the 35% point where I think, okay, I have a book length project here. I know these people, this plot is working. And then, from there, I enjoy it and everything else. But it's that is sort of my, I guess, brainstorming process.
Yeah. And it's just the thing that's in the DNA, I think, of a Tracy Sierra book, in the two that I've read, not the one in the drawer, which I'd still love to read because I bet it's good, is that there's this propulsive forward motion on the top line that reveals a lot underneath as you go. And so the layers of this book, kind of like an avalanche, the top of it's moving really fast and stuff is going on underneath. And it's so revelatory throughout as we go on this journey with Zach. How do you love this book as much as I do? I mean, are you happy with it? Talk a little bit about
Yeah, I mean, I really love the character of Zach, and I really enjoyed writing the book. And it's sort of funny because, I think in thrillers, there's like so much pressure to have some mind-blowing twist and all this kind of stuff. But one thing I really loved about him as a protagonist is that there are certain mysteries that you as the grown-up are going to solve that stay a little mysterious to him because he's a child and can't quite wrap his mind around that stuff yet, even though he'll eventually learn it. And so therefore, it allows for a lot of surprises for readers, but also surprises for the characters, even as the readers kind of see through it. And so it's kind of, I think, nice because, thriller readers are really, really smart and savvy readers. They've seen every structure and twist that is possible, right? And as a thriller reader myself, an avid thriller reader, I feel the same way. And so I thought it was like really nice to have this character because there are twists that you see coming that he doesn't, but you understand you're supposed to. It doesn't feel like a twist. And it almost is like, oh God, this kid better figure this out. This is stressing me out, So it adds sort of this emotional depth where you don't, even if you do see something coming, you kind of understand you're supposed to. And it's still like, you still want to see it play out because.
And I think that's so sophisticated.
You can't see it. Yeah.
I think that's so sophisticated of you because there are things that we as adults think, oh, I know what this is. But then he doesn't.
Right.
Then the thing that makes it extra special is that you allow us to have the joy of the realization then with him and what happens as a result of that and how he changes as a result of that. And so in that, it's very realistic. This is a really realistic character who we love, and we love the mom, and we are, all of us who are moms in any way understand the gifts that we can give our children, the gift of survival in all kinds of ways, which is what his mom has given him in this book, which is really lovely.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there are surprises that readers won't see coming too. So you're kind of in his same shoes with that. But I think, hopefully because you are side by side with him and seeing things he doesn't, but then also being surprised too. There's a lot of satisfaction, hopefully.
I'm trying, as you're talking, I'm thinking 1, 2, I'm counting up all the times that I just gasped in this book. And I got up to 4 and now I have to talk, but it is surprising. It is lovely. It is emotional. It is gripping and truly a good story. Congratulations. This is great. This is great. And I see so many people here. Miriam is here, and Renee and Andrew and Emily. And so Lori is here, Robin Stull, Julie Brinkley, Katie Crutchfield, Darlene. This is so nice. Denise is here. Julia Brinkley is here. Julie Brinkley. So nice. Suzanne is here. All of you are so great. And I know that some of you have questions for Tracy, and Jade will pop those on the screen right now. Renee says, do you consider nature to be a character in your book? Says Renee.
Yeah, I think so. In this one, for sure. I definitely think that hopefully my love of and respect for the place comes through, but it certainly has a mind of its own, we'll say.
It does have a mind of it. But it is your book puts us there with the dangers we can see and the dangers we can't see, and that is quite wonderful. Physical and emotional dangers are very powerful in this book. Who else has a question? Good one, Renee. Oh, another Renee. How old were you when you first thought you wanted to write a novel?
I honestly don't remember. I've always been such an avid reader. I always wanted to write. I was an English major, but as a very responsible English major, I became an attorney, as so many of us do. And then once I got old enough kind of to stop caring a little bit what people thought of me, I guess you could say, I decided to really try writing in a serious way and, risk putting things out into the world. But I really don't remember a time. I talked to, my daughter's elementary school last year, and I brought in a novel that I had written in second grade, that my teacher had bound with like electrical tape. So
what was it?
It was actually quite, I will say, not the best plot, but it was about kids who are abducted back in time to ancient Egypt. The reason it was, which sounds good until they find a telephone to call home and get rescued. So,
well,
in ancient Egypt,
it's once you accept time travel,
there you go.
Somebody brought it at some point,
Yep.
I love that. That's so cute. I'm so happy that someone saved that for you. That's very nice. One more question. Who else has a question? Sherry, that's so great. How is this release different from your first one? Oh, what a good question.
I think it's nice to have a better idea of kind of what I didn't do right the first time. Like now I know well enough not to look at reviews and stuff because they just get me down. I think now is my first book, Night Watching, came out in 2024. I think this is a much more difficult time now to release a book. I think it's much more difficult to sell a book. There's a lot less book coverage. Hank, you talk to a lot of authors. Every single one I've met has said that. But I still so hope that people are finding, comfort and escape it or whatever they look for in books. For me, like I need books for to function in the world. I need to be reading. So I think people are. I just think it's harder to find things a lot of the time because you don't necessarily have the exposure. And I have a real love-hate social media relationship, but things are so much more diffuse. It's a lot of the time harder to kind of find what you personally will really connect with. But I think it is, I thought it would be a lot less stressful and a lot easier, but I don't know. Maybe it's like having a kid. Each one is unique and stressful in different ways, but also exciting and beautiful in different ways. So.
I think that's very wise. And I think that's very appropriate. I don't think it gets any easier. It gets different. And I think we learn, exactly as you were alluding to. I think we learn what's real and what's not just about us, but it's about the world. Absolutely. And what we can, just like an avalanche, what we can control and what we can't control. And there is a lot to be said. Jade, do we have one more question? I know we have many more, but Denise is saying, what's next? That's a good one.
Yeah, I think I'm outlining and doing my scribbling process now for my book 3 and just starting to actually write it. And I think, with any book that I do, there will probably be snow and there will be an unlikely main character. And I saw another question that said, sort of a statement like, oh, I thought you might start with a fear. And that is very true. I'm a very anxious person. I always start with many, many fears in any book that I write with. So it'll definitely be, scary, suspenseful type of story, kind of darker story. I kind of find writing to be my therapy where I excise the fear and anxieties that I have. So yeah, that I think that will be next, but I don't want to give too many details because I'm always willing to throw stuff out for, better ideas. So a lot of times things really shift as I write them.
If we're lucky, they do. And well, I didn't see that. I didn't see that comment. That's such a perceptive comment.
Yeah, I thought so too. I think it's often like I said, there's so many sources of inspiration and so many different things that go into process that when you try to break it down, it's almost hard to order what it's like a chicken egg, which comes first.
I think someone said, I'm dredging this from my poor memory, but someone said to Stephen King, do you write what you know? And he said, no, I write what I fear.
Yeah, I think I can see that for sure. I can see that. I like to combine them.
I agree. And I think I've done that so gorgeously. That's what a segue in Warning Signs by Tracy Sierra. And right now we are going to spin the wheel of fun to see which one of you lucky, lucky readers is going to get your very own copy of Warning Signs by Tracy Sierra. And the winner is, and you don't need to know how to ski to read this book. Susie Baldwin, that's so marvelous. Susie is such a wonderful fan of readers and reading and such a wonderful influencer. So she is exactly the perfect book reader for you, Tracy. Warning Signs by Tracy Sierra.
I hope you enjoy it, Susie, and all of you.
Washington State. This is a perfect book for her. The rest of you, you know what to do. Run, 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 click, click, click. Get your own copy of Warning Signs in ebook, in hardcover, in Audible. It's amazing. Clear your calendars like I did. Forget about errands. You're going to be reading Warning Signs. Before I let you go, Tracy, let me just remind you next week, we are double booked at Prime Time, and you know we love that. At 3 p.m., we'll have The Water Lies by Amy Meyerson. I have not read this yet.
I love that cover.
Yeah, I do too. It's quite amazing. It takes place in Venice, California, or someplace like that. And it says it's a mixture of Rear Window and The Last Time I Saw Him. So that sounds good. And then at 4 p.m. ET, the brilliant, and I do mean brilliant, Adele Parks with Our Beautiful Mess. This is her 25th book in 25 years. Almost every one of them has been a #1 Sunday Times bestseller in the UK. She's coming to
incredible
now. And this is really perfect domestic book club suspense, if that is her own genre. So we'll get to meet Adele Parks. She is just great. Tracy, thank you for being here today. You're absolutely marvelous. And congratulations on another wonderful book.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for all your questions. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
We've had a wonderful time. Oh, yeah, hold that.
I'll hold it up too. There we go.
That's great. You're in Colorado right now.
Yeah, skiing. I'm really on brand with this one.
Really on brand. Well, be careful. And the rest of you too, thank you so much for being with us today. We will see you next Tuesday at 3 p.m. ET and 4 p.m. ET. And until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book.